I'm Peter A. Carlson. I was born in Warren, Minnesota on August 16th, 1942. Graduated from Argyle High School in 1960 and St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota in 1964. During that time period, I was in the ROTC, Air Force ROTC program for 4 years and served in various capacities as in the leadership of our students, and probably the highlight was my senior year. The Air Force, for those of us that wanted to be pilots, they took us out to Stanton, which was the local airport, and we were given X number of hours, I don't remember now, 30 or 40 hours of flight time, and then a few of us, I think there were 3 of us, that went on and got our private license after that program was over.
Can I ask you a question, Peter?
Sure.
What made you decide to go into that program?
Well, my dad was a veteran of World War II, Marine, and when he came back, he decided to use the GI Bill and traveled down to Crookston once a week and flew there. I remember watching him land one day. It was touch and go, only he touched and then must have pulled back on the thing, and the plane actually buckled in the middle.
And that was your dad, Reuben.
He realized at that time that he wasn't going to be a pilot, and but it got me interested in it. And in high school, I wasn't able to solo because of my age. There was a requirement, I believe we had to be 17 or 18 years old or something like that, and to get a license. But I did take the lessons from Howard Chandler in Warren, and I was very enthused about it. So anyway, the Air Force took the graduates of all the universities, I guess you'd say, that had the ROTC program, and usually it was the married people that got the first slots. And so I had to stick around here and worked in the bank for from June until December, I guess it was.
What year was that?
1964, yeah, 1964. And then after Christmas, I drove down to Del Rio, Texas, right on the Mexican border, and that's where I spent the next year, a little over a year, and I got my wings, and from there I went a myriad of schools. The first, I believe, was State Air Force Base in
Nevada.
Nevada. And
What type of plane did you train on to get your wings?
T-37 was the jet. I had already had my my pre-deal in college, and then that was a prop airplane, Cessna 172. Then I went, and of course, at that point, with less than 60 hours of flying time, I thought I knew everything that there was to know about flying. And little did we know what we were going to get through, but I flew the T-37 first, which is a side-by-side jet, double engine, single line thrust, and that was for about 6 months. And then from there to the T-38, which was a supersonic pilot in the front and the instructor pilot in the back seat, or as a solo, the guy in the front seat. There was no instructor at that point. And
So when you first got into supersonic jet, what did that feel like?
you didn't even know that you were going supersonic.
Really?
And I guess the first time I went supersonic was in the T-37, which isn't equipped to go supersonic, but I was coming out of a maneuver where I rolled over on my back and then pulled it down through, and of course going down and max speed because you needed to get out of the deal, I went supersonic. And there's a little road from Del Rio, Texas to oh golly, what was that little town?
Another little town.
Whatever it was, nice little 2-lane road there. And we had many people jumping out of their cars and couldn't figure out what was going on. But anyway, that's kind of where I got started that way. And then I said I went to Stead Air Force Base. I was there for 2 or 3 weeks.
Which Air Force base?
Stead.
Stead?
And that was winter survival. Now, we all had our orders at that point, and I knew I was going to Vietnam, and why I had to go through winter survival. It was it's probably the toughest thing I did in the whole time I was in the Air Force. And climbing those mountains, I swore that I'd never climb another mountain as long as I lived, in about 4 to 5 feet of snow. And it was not a pleasant thing. Anyway, and then from there I went to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona, and went through the radar school there, and I guess the first experiences of flying a fighter airplane. And then from there we went to Tampa, Florida, which sounds like a nice place, but we were there from, I think, the 4th of July to just before Thanksgiving. It was miserable.
Hot and humid.
Yes, well, Karen had an aunt, my wife Karen, who on the other side of the bay is St. Petersburg, and she had a house there, and she obviously left for the summer, but we we moved in and we stayed there for
Well, till November.
5 months or whatever it was, 5 or 6 months, and
Was this your honeymoon place then, or?
Oh,
I guess you'd say well, we lived. We never were in government housing. We always had to find something off base. And Karen was teaching school in Del Rio, and so she had to finish the school year out. And so I was pretty much by myself in southern Arizona. And then when she got out, we were there maybe a couple of weeks, which was really kind of a fun time. We didn't have any kids or anything, and so we were really tourists going around to all the fun places. The thing is that somebody forgot to.
they have 4.
What?
Tell them about the airplane in Tampa.
Oh, well, I went into the F4 then in
That's when you started flying the F4?
well, Davis Monthan first, and then, but most of it was in Tampa, Florida. And
At the time, that was a state-of-the-art jet.
it was the first fighter airplane that was designed by a computer, and there's things on that airplane. The wings were swept back, but there were a vertical slot section at the very end, and nobody could figure out what it was. So the manufacturer made a couple of the airplanes without that. The plane was terrible to fly in that configuration. They put the thing back in and it was stable and it was a good deal. One of my highlights of that training was we had a night formation. Flew out over, well, in the Bermuda Triangle area, and then back up to the base. And I was flying number 2, and when the instructor took the airplane from me, he says, "Now, just holding everything just the way you put it." And here I was upside down on top of the lead airplane, still looking at the same damn light that was there before and guiding off. Only I had turned myself inverted. And the instructor was very, very pleased. He said most people don't get to see that. And of course, in that long period of time that I was like that, I became disoriented, and I didn't believe that right was up and
Up was down.
anyway, but anyway, it was a good experience. And then let's see, from there we got a leave of 2-3 weeks, and I came back to Argyle, and Karen stayed here with my folks for a couple of weeks after I shipped out, and went to Davis Monthan Air Force Base in California, and we, like every other stupid pilots, I guess you'd call us. We went to the top of the Mark
Hopper.
hotel and bought a big bottle of whiskey, put our names on it, and it went into storage. Cutting a few years back, I was coming back, and I stopped there to have a sip of that whiskey that we had bought. Couldn't be found anywhere.
It was gone, huh?
Somebody got it. And there was no records or anything. Somebody got it. But then we flew commercial airline to the Philippines, and previous to this, I had my assignment to, it was in South Vietnam, Hanoi. And while we were there, they put us through jungle survival. And that was kind of an interesting ordeal, but nothing that I'd want to go through again. And then from there again, we went to, we stayed there, and then I got new orders.
So you were actually on the ground in Vietnam?
No, I never.
You were in South Vietnam taking jungles?
This was in the Philippines.
In the Philippines, okay.
We were still there, and then they got new orders, and I went to Ubon, Thailand, in the F4 again, and I was there from end of November of '67 till the July of '68. So it was, what, 7 months, 8 months. And in that time period, then I had my 133 combat missions, and I was all set to go home.
You did how many missions over Hanoi?
Oh, boy, I don't have that listed.
I just happen to have a list. And I never understood the packages, but 133 combat missions, 100 of them over North Vietnam, including 32. Would you explain the package 5 and 6?
So 5 and 6 were, 5 was Hanoi area, and that was, what was 30 some there?
133 combat missions.
No, but there.
32 over package 5 and 6.
And number 6 was trying to think of the names now. I'm drawing a complete, but it's coastal city in North Vietnam.
It was a coastal city in North Vietnam?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was package 6. And then there were the first package, number 1, was right above the DMZ, just to the north. And that's where we had, well, I guess you'd call it the easy missions. They didn't have any surface-to-air missiles or flak. We didn't run into that down there. As you moved north, it wasn't until you got in 5 and 6 that you saw most of the SAM missiles and flak.
So
No, different people had different situations over there. Like when I had 18 missions in, I turned out to be the because I was a substitute moving into the squadron, which was the
Satan's Angels?
what?
Satan's Angels?
Satan's Angels,
That's
but I
enough.
can't think of the number. Anyway, I was a senior pilot, and so I got the dubious honor of getting to be a flight instructor. So anybody that hadn't been over Haiphong was
Haiphong, okay.
or Hanoi, I got the joy of taking him up there.
Oh, really? Well, I need to ask you this, and we didn't bring it up at the ceremony, but the nickname Pete the Sam, how did you get that name?
Well, it was right around my 18th mission. They had just come out with a little box and installed it in the airplanes, and there was a drone or something on the wing that sent out false signals. And if Sam was coming up, it theoretically told you that one had been launched and you were the target. And ours never worked. And so all of a sudden, everybody was ducking down and maneuvering away from this thing, and it came right between number 3 and number 4, and we were number 4. And to this day, that SAM missile had to be going over twice the speed of sound, and we were just right around the being subsonic or supersonic, and I swear that I could tell the markings on that SAM missile when it went by, which is impossible. At those speeds, it would have been a big blur.
It slowed down for you.
I don't know. In a way, it never went off. It just went through. Apparently, it was guided, but not detonated by a lot of different things they had.
So you had a lucky charm. You never got shot down.
No, and I think I stopped counting someplace around midterm of my combat missions. I had over 68 sightings of SAM missiles,
Wow.
and
They didn't
never a
like
scratch on the airplane.
it. Very good. And as time went on, so you were done with your missions after 133?
200.
And then you went to training?
Then I had the choice of coming back and spending a little time with my family and then going through upgrade training in the F4 again and go right back there. And I said, no, thank you. I had always had a vision that I wanted to be a commercial pilot, and I thought, boy, the C-141, which was a 4-engine jet air transport, would be the answer. And so I went to Oklahoma City, and well, I guess I should back up. Someplace around my 70th mission, I had a son born to Karen and I back here in the States, and where everybody else was taking R&Rs, rest and recuperation, and going to Japan or Hawaiian Islands or whatever else, I stayed there like a stoop and tried to get as many missions as I could. And my roommate, who arrived the same day I did in the squadron, we both finished within an hour of each other our 100th mission, so to speak. And so there was a point to something there. I'm missing it.
Just go on. We can get back to it.
Pardon?
We can get back to it if you.
Oh, going back, went to Oklahoma City and I trained in the C-141s.
That's a big jet, isn't it?
It's a big
Prop
one.
jet.
Where we could maneuver a fighter plane upside down and sideways in any place you wanted to go. Just keep the pressure on the stick. But in the C-141, if you went over 45 degrees turning radius, you were in an unusual attitude. But
And being a fighter pilot, I suppose that was hard not to do.
Well, most of my missions in the lower packages were probably just a little over an hour, were maybe 3.5 hours when we went over the packages 5 and 6. And then here and all, I'm flying treks, so we'd fly from, usually, they switched us around, but I'd fly from Tacoma, Washington to Anchorage, Alaska. We'd refuel there, and then from there to Tokyo, well, outside of Tokyo. And then on either to, we'd take supplies to South Korea, all over Vietnam, Thailand, of course, for Redwood Station before.
So you would land in Vietnam?
Yeah.
But you remember some of the air bases you land on?
Oh,
Da Nang?
Da Nang,
You ever do Chu Lai?
Yes, July, and
Probably Cameron Bay?
Cameron Bay, that was probably the main one. And then what's the one right out of Saigon?
Right out of Saigon would be Long Binh, I think.
Long Binh, yeah. And
Did you ever land on an aircraft carrier?
no,
You never had to do that, huh?
no. I had a friend who here again arrived right about when I did, and he's Bob Pardo, and that was his mission in life, was to get hit someplace over Haiphong, so he'd have to bail out, but he wasn't going to do that. He was going to land on a carrier.
So that he could land on a carrier.
He never did. But he did one of our missions. I was lead airplane, and we got pretty beat up coming out. Not my airplane, and but number 2 and number 4 both got hit, and they were leaking fuel. And Pardo figured out that if he had number 2 would drop his tail hook. The F-4 was originally a Navy airplane, and when the Air Force got a hold of it, the first thing they did was beef up the landing gear, but they kept the hook on the back, and we practiced with it, so if we came back, you could land 4 airplanes on the same runway almost simultaneously with two of them taking the barriers with the hook, and we had number 2, I guess it was, drop his hook, and then he put his windscreen of his airplane on the tail hook and pushed the other airplane out of North Vietnam, and we figured it was someplace around 30 some miles that
Really?
he pushed them out. Then they both had to bail out, but it was in friendly territory.
You got him out of danger.
And Laos, and that was the longest mission I ever had. I refueled, well, one time going to the target, and then 3 times while we were covering for the guys on the ground. And
Refueling in the air?
yeah,
That has to be a little hairy.
oh, it was interesting. No, it wasn't. You had all sorts of visuals to watch while you were up there. Plus, you had a crewman in the well, it was 135s
Fuelers.
refueling us, and he's sitting there watching you move, and he could pop the thing and get ready right away, or talk you through it if whatever it was. But no, it was no big.
So it worked well.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
But anyway, and then now all of a sudden I get into the C-141, and my legs were sometimes maybe 8 to 8 hours in flight. In fact, we set the endurance record for the C-141. We were in Yokota, Japan, and it was we celebrated Christmas Eve in the Officers Club. Went back, slept in our trailer, and we were assigned a trailer, and then back again next morning. We had Christmas Day service, but I had mentioned to the leader that I was flying combat over Hanoi the previous Christmas. So this would be 2 Christmases in a row that I was missing. Well, he got on the phone and called headquarters, and within hours we were in the air flying used tires back to Tacoma, Washington, and it was a straight flight, and we I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was not Dakota, Penn, it was the Philippines, so it was even a longer stretch.
Further to go.
And took the 141 back.
So
Well,
you
we
got to spend
flew,
Christmas with your family then, or?
yeah,
Not
Christmas
in the
Eve.
Philippines.
Christmas Eve I was home, and we had
In Tacoma, Washington.
In Tacoma. Okay.
the little boy, our little boy had opened his gifts and was about ready to drizzle off into nighttime, so
What was his name?
Tony,
Tony. Okay.
and put him to bed, and the next day we had the full day of Christmas Day, and opening the rest of the gifts, and it was quite an experience.
In the C-141, what did you haul? What you were bringing supplies to Vietnam and back and forth, or?
Well, we sometimes we were a mortuary airplane. We took bodies back. Most often we were air evac. People that they were taken from the jungle of South Vietnam and brought to the Philippines where Clark Air Force Base, and they had a huge medical team there, and they
You took the wounded back.
did it. And then we'd fly the wounded then back to the United States. Now, almost 3/4 of all my missions were in that top area where I told you about flying to Anchorage and so on. Otherwise, we'd go like to Wake Island.
That was a big one, wasn't it? that the one?
Or Hawaii.
Well, Wake Island, that had the runway over the ocean, didn't it?
Yes.
I remember that when I landed there.
And when you left, the Goonie birds would get up on the wings, and we'd provide the momentum. They'd just sit there and flop their wings. Pretty soon they were flying. And then to the Philippines. Never got to Guam. Never got there, but we.
Another tropical, hot and humid
Yeah.
place, yeah.
But I spent a lot of time at South Vietnam, and then Formosa.
You covered a lot of ground.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It was interesting, but
So out of all your service, what was your highlight? What was the best time of your service?
flying the fighter was. I guess you could call it like, or the way I put it was flying a very expensive Formula One racer as opposed to a 16-wheeler, 18-wheeler semi.
Did you, while you flew these missions, did you do any ground support, like for grunts in the field?
No. Came close to it. We finished a mission in package 1, and they took us down to Da Nang and put new missiles and bombs on us. And then we went through a briefing on ground support. But then luckily another airplane that was normally do that sort of stuff got the call, and they unloaded us, and we flew back to Thailand, and they went out and did their thing.
Because I can remember there was nothing prettier than a F4 coming and helping you out. That was a pretty plane at that time.
Yeah, well, it's a big plane.
Yep.
But it had, you could put the F4 on its tail and take it up as high as it would go. I guess I probably shouldn't even mention how high it was, but, and then all of a sudden the plane would start to wobble, and you knew you had to get out of there right away. Because if it went into a spin, the first thing you had to do was bail out. There was nothing you could do.
It was uncontrolled.
And I'll never forget one night making a run on a target in Cambodia, and all of a sudden it became very, very quiet. Both engines flamed out, and pushed it into afterburner, and they started, and we got out of there.
Training went a long ways on that one, huh?
Oh, yeah. That was, and they brought the airplane back, and various people would take it out, and same thing would happen. They never did figure out. They ended up taking the airplane and scavenging it and using it for parts.
Do you ever wish that you could get on one of these newfangled angle F-22s, or?
No, not really.
I mean,
We, after we moved back to Argyle, my roommate went on, I think he's 24 years, I think he was in, and he was flying 106s, and he landed at Grand Forks Air Force Base, and I picked him up, and he spent 4 or 5 days with us in Argyle. And then when we went back, he said, I can't remember where he was heading, it was someplace in Washington, a smaller base, and he said, why don't you plan my return and go through the briefings with me, and so I did that, and then he had the security at Grand Forks Air Force Base take me to the end of the runway, and he took off, of course, and the 106 was right up there. And that was the only time I can honestly say that I missed what I had been doing.
mm-hmm.
And but it was short-lived.
You got over it, huh?
I got over it.
Yeah. Okay, and Karen, I guess I don't know what your maiden name is.
Wall,
Wall?
W-A-L-L,
And you were originally from?
Chicago, well, a suburb of Oak Park, Illinois.
Whoop,
Oak Park,
Oak
Illinois.
Park, Illinois, okay. And how did you two meet?
At St. Olaf,
Huh?
at college.
In college, okay. St. Olaf College, all right.
I was a year older, and I was just elected to student body treasurer, and their sorority was having a dance, which was previous to my going to St. Olaf. They didn't have dances. And so she came over and asked me to dance. Well, I had broken my ankle on a skiing trip a few months before that, so, but we did,
A little bit, yeah, we danced.
you know, and then we started dating, and the rest is history.
How many years married?
56.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Were you, did you run in any MiGs while you were flying over Hanoi?
I saw my share of them. Like I was going to say, I guess earlier, different people saw different things, and there were people that flew and they were flying in flak that was worse than it was in World War II. And I saw a little bit of flak, not a whole lot. And I saw a few MiGs. I chased a couple of them, but with fuel the way it was and that far to go, we had to get home. And but my roommate ended up shooting 2 MiGs down, and my specialty was the SAMs,
Yeah.
Surface Air Missile.
You know, not very many people know that we, shot down MiGs or had combat with MiGs. Not very many people know that.
Well, when I left Southeast Asia, our wing out of Yuban, Thailand, had shot down more MiGs than the Marines, Navy combined, and or the rest of the Air Force. And our headquarters had a little peak entrance that came out and a white background, and there was a red star for each MiG that was shot down. It was packed with red stars.
Really? That I did not know. Wow.
I,
You don't have a picture of that, do you?
I do someplace.
In his slides, he does, but
It'd be,
When I first got back, Knights of Columbus had me deal, Warren Legion, Argyle Legion, Argyle Lions Club. Yeah, maybe there's some I'm forgetting, but I gave presentations to them, and it was fun for me because it brought it back to me. You'd all of a sudden something would click, and hey, I remember this or that or
Right.
something other.
Right.
And it's fun. My roommate from Southeast Asia, he and his wife, first wife, were here 2 or 3 times, and they have also visited us in Arizona. And we took a vacation to Maine and together, and a few other things like that. But we keep in touch. I'm sure at least once every couple of months we talk on the phone. And
good.
Peter, it was tell him how long you and Steve were together, which is very unusual.
oh yeah, Steve and I were in the same student squadron in T-37s, T-38s, and then we went to STED together. We were roommates at STED, and they're in the same squadron, training squadron in Davis Monthan,
Florida.
Tacoma,
Yeah.
and in Tampa, Florida. And then we went through jungle survival, winter survival, you name it, together. And then we were roommates in Southeast Asia. So
Lifetime friendship.
yes,
Good.
it was a good one. In fact, his first wife and Steve came and visited us in
Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona, and within a week after they left, we got a call from Steve that she had a massive heart attack. She was a tax preparer, and she hadn't been in the office for the time period that they flew out to visit us and whatever, that she wanted to get caught up. She went into the office, and a day later they found her there. Steve had traveled back to Indiana to visit his father, who was getting old, and
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Peter, that we might have left out?
no, I imagine on the drive the lake we'll think of
Several things.
several things.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want, later on, we can do some more.
Oh,
Oh, no.
Okay. Well, thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Appreciate you doing this for us.
well, thank you